Welcome to the Second Coming. I'm here with Brother T. I'm your host, Jason Keaton, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for you to join us again today. And Brother T, how was your week?
It's been great, man. It's been a really good week, good weekend, and excited to be here again today for the True Thought community and the Second Coming, Jesus 2.0. No one to crucify, right?
Love it. I love it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, any big plans? I heard you got some travel plans coming up.
I got a couple of things maybe going on over the next few weeks, and I'll share some of that maybe in the emails that are going out. We are just trying to get out and gather with people. I'm interested in doing some gatherings with people that, whether two or more are gathered, right? So I'm just traveling around a little bit, doing some Brother T gatherings. I'm looking at some stuff. In fact, I think I'm going to be in your area pretty soon here, Jason. So I'm excited about being in Toledo with you and that market up there. And we've got some really wonderful friends up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited for you to join all of us in person. So that's exciting stuff coming up. So you want to pray us in, breathe us in, and then we'll get started today?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just take a moment here. Let's take a good deep breath. We're going to turn within and connect with Spirit. So as we feel the wash come over us of this connection with love itself, our soul, our brother Jesus, the masters, the angels, the guides, we'll bring them all in to this experience with us. And we ask for love and guidance. And we're going to go forward from here. We say it will be so. And another episode here of the Second Coming. Amen.
Thank you, Brother T. And I have a question today. I've been getting emails and stuff being pushed to me and stuff, and it's about so many people are looking for joy in their life and replacing the suffrage and one thing that occurred to me when I was on the path of seeking, I was seeking the spirituality and seeking the spiritual community. Some of the other religions and dogmas embrace suffering as necessary, and that really never aligned with me. And when I found spirituality in our spiritual community, it made me realize, and your talks made me realize that God does not want suffering. And I want to ask the question, how can we replace the suffering that our human ego feels with joy and happiness?
That's a great question. A few weeks ago, I actually sent out an email, and I think the title of it, is Suffering Necessary or something like that. But see, we mix, we keep making God up in our image. The human operating system, coming from that place, the human self, the operating system that we are born into, and it's important because it is a system, a thought system that keeps the body alive. The body begins to, number one, it becomes to become aware of its existence. I'm talking about a baby at this point. And then it becomes aware of its surroundings. And then ultimately, through education, training, family, learning, all those things, we begin to be able to take care of ourselves and sustain the body and keep ourselves alive, through building a home to live in and work and nutrition and exercise and all those things. And that's the operating system that I refer to when I say human operating system. And that system is not what God created. That's what we kind of created as our own thought system, because it's a thought system that is literally founded in the principle of separation. And separation, when we fell into this experience, in other words, when we reincarnate or incarnate, if you will, into this experience, we go through an experience where we're literally stepping off into a darkness, and we don't remember where we came from. We don't remember our name, and we don't remember our purpose. And it's a void. So the ego, and the first experience we have is fear, right? When we're coming through the birth canal, so to speak, the fear is what we experience. So these are parts of this thought system that we call the ego, right? But to experience separation, we have to imagine and dream, if you will, an experience. My cat's excited again today. We have to dream the experience of separation. And she's been running around. There she goes. So what are you doing, girl? Come here. This is the animal that's causing all the problems. She's a good girl.
She's a lover.
She's a lover, man. She's definitely a lover. She's in the house of love here.
Right.
So anyway, so this operating system based on separation, right? And so what we experience initially is the absence of knowing ourself, and the soul itself, as it matures, becomes more and more influential in our experience here in form. But initially, the operating system ignores it altogether. Again, referring back to like the perfect example to me is the caterpillar and the butterfly. So ultimately, what we're experiencing is the opposite of heaven. What the ego construct is the opposite of heaven. So fear is an element of that. Blame and guilt is an element of that. Separation is the element of that. And so here, that self believes that it's struggling, right? And it also believes that it needs to make sacrifice. And we make up gods in our own image. And those can be vengeful, wrathful, jealous. You know, if we look at, I see these movies. I used to buy comic books when I was younger, and I was, there were always gods and goddesses and superpowers and stuff. None of that is God. None of that is God. In heaven, which is in the mind, everything is in the mind of God. This is the mind of love. So we are made in that image, and I should say our soul is made in that image and knows nothing of suffering and nothing of sacrifice. So if we understand that foundation, that the thought system of the world is based in struggle and suffering, right? Sacrifice and pain and fear and guilt and all those things, the opposite of heaven. Then it believes that it's in an environment where those things are necessary and those things are required. Some of those things are requirements of existence. But the soul, when the soul becomes manifested as us in form, in other words, the ego operating system gets in the back seat and the soul is in the driver's seat, the soul is not attached to the form at all. It doesn't see itself as form. It knows itself as spirit. It doesn't know itself as gender. Those are all constructs of the human operating system, right? So once we begin to see through the vision of Christ, is what it's been called, we see a new world, a world where we are no more concerned about the chair over there suffering. Is the chair suffering? No. If somebody took a hammer to it and broke it apart, do we feel suffering for the chair? No. And that's how the soul sees this form that we are coexisting in. It sees it like everything else. It sees itself as a part of everything else. And all of this is very illusory in its construct. And so the soul is able to see through those illusory constructs, and no struggle, no sacrifice, no suffering. How's that?
I love that. I love that. And I know God's words to be true when you speak them, because when I was sick and suffering and I had my experience where I looked down at my body, my soul was speaking to me and it said, why would you even want to be in that body? It's exactly what you just
Yeah.
said. It's like it was completely disconnected and made me as my higher self realize that I am not my body. And it's amazing the things that we do um, to separate ourselves from God. So beautiful,
Right. I
beautiful.
think, Jason, that we tend to imagine all of that until we have an experience of it. And thank you for sharing your experience of that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
that's
and
that's the point. We
yeah,
we can't we can't we can't really know it until we experience it. So what the ego does is it imagines all of these things, and most of the time these imaginations are way off the mark, right? But uh, once we either have an experience of enlightenment or we have someone who is helping us to learn this truth, then we can begin to understand it and we quit defaulting back to false concepts. And we have what we call in A Course in Miracles is a corrected perception.
absolutely. I love everything you're saying, and it's for those that are seeking and just joining and not as far on to this path of enlightenment. It's important to realize the conditioning that our human ego has been subject to our whole life. When my mom found out that we were doing this podcast, I was hosting this podcast with Brother T. She sent me this stack of documents of her Bible studies that she
Mhm.
was conditioned. And I looked through it. I looked through it with intent. And I'm like, I'm looking for some stuff for our podcast questions. And it's all fear based and ego based and so ingrained with the punishment and suffrage God is going to impede on us. And your words,
Yes.
Brother T. And maybe you want to take a few words to just assure the new viewers, the new seekers, that it's okay. You're not blasphemy. You're not have to experience this suffrage. What's something that can put the new seeker's mind at ease, that it's okay to open up our hearts and our ears and our eyes
Right.
to this path?
Well, when we first come into our incarnation here, we spend the first many years, a couple of decades, almost 3 decades, for our brain to develop. Okay. And what we're trying to figure out how to do is to sustain ourselves, right? And we try to learn how to be in relationships with other people. And our authority figures, our family, our parents, our teachers, our churches, and our government, these authority figures um, love to keep themselves in power, right? I'm not speaking necessarily about our parents, but the point is, people with great intentions, good intentions, uh, are doing the best they can to teach us as their children and as their students, and they're our mentors, what they have learned to help them survive in the world of form. And we have these invisible aspects of our experience that we can't validate it. Nobody can really say we're lying because there's no way to prove that we're wrong, as an example. And that's a big deal, right? But we get conditioned, and a lot of it, and I want to call it as mutually agreed upon definitions, right? I call those mad ideas, mutually agreed upon definitions. And the truth is that we form groups of people with mutually agreed ideas of the way things are supposed to be, and they're all over the place, from family structures to school structures to state structures to country structures. And so we become country centric or family centric, or et cetera, et cetera. And we accept the well-formed thought system of those mutually agreed upon ideas. And if we don't accept them, guess what? They will kick us to the curb. Have you ever been in part of an organization and you didn't quite agree with a group of people or whatever with their construct or their ideas about what the group was supposed to be representing or how they were supposed to act or whatever? And what do they do with you, right? They say, you got to go away. You got to leave, because mutually agreed upon definitions are the foundation for social structures, right? And we respect them because we're operating from a foundation of fear, all of us individually and collectively, that these laws and these rules and these structures of ideas that we are required to agree with help maintain order so that everybody feels safe within the group. Period, period, period. That doesn't mean that they're real, and it doesn't mean that they're necessary, but that's what we've been conditioned to believe, because if we don't accept the mutually agreed upon definitions of how we're supposed to be, then we can't be in the group, and so we become isolated. And if we are isolated and separated, then we cannot survive, literally, emotionally, and sometimes physically. So these are foundations that are established with good intent. But when we begin to grow up spiritually, we begin to see that we don't need any of that, because our source is not that group. Our source is not that government. Our source is not that job. Our source is not that spouse. I'm not saying we shouldn't have relationships and that we shouldn't enjoy relationships and being in love with each other. But the point I'm making is our source is God, and all has already been given unto us. All, and the Bible says this, we can go to the Bible, which contradicts itself over and over and over, and we can see that the Bible says that you already have all that you need. And even Jesus said, even you will do more than I. What did he mean? And we hold him up on a pedestal as a God and say that we're not worthy. But wait a minute, he said, even you will do more than I, right? So these are constructs of fear that are the foundation of our societal structures. And it makes sense then, doesn't it, Jason, that we've made God up in our image. So how do we help people to take a step upon the pathway? We do that by experience, by witnessing our life. If you've gone from misery to joy, right, then you're happy all the time. And Eckhart Tolle is a good example of that. He's sitting on a bench and he's blissed out, and people come and start talking to him, and they're like, well, I don't know what's going on, but I want what you have.
Right.
And he has taught hundreds of thousands of people about being present, about being in the now, right? And all of this started with him sitting on a bench in the park, being at peace. So how can we help others? By being at peace. We can help others by living what we have discovered as the very truth of our existence in our relationship with God.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Brother T. And we're about at our time for today, but what's one simple tool that we can take with us today, a simple spiritual tool that we can take with us today to bring us joy, bring us to that level of joy, or at least the next rung of the level to joy?
Well, one simple tool, and it's a principle that's taught to us by Jesus in the book of A Course in Miracles. And he simply says, be only love. It's harder than it sounds, because the mind wants to judge, right? So the key then, and we recently, Jason, talked about the keys to the kingdom. We talked about the way of mastery. One of those keys, the third key, is called allowance. And allowance and the vibration of allowance and the vibration of forgiveness are very much the same. In other words, allow all things. And so if I'm being only love, then I am going to step back and withhold judgment and allow people who have free will and have a right to be here and have a right to experience. Even God is not telling them what to do. God has given all of us free will. And God says you can either accept my will or you can have your own free will, right? Ultimately, that's the journey home. So literally just be only love, which was an admonition that Jesus has given us over and over and over, really. And I just add a little spice to it and say, just remember to allow all things. So whatever you're facing today, whatever you might be bumping into today, and it looks like somebody is not acting appropriately or whatever, as long as they're not harming anybody else. Now, that's not appropriate, so we would stand for integrity there. But I'm just saying, if somebody wants to have a particular view or a particular perspective on something that's going on, allow them to have their own thinking system until they start to see how joyful you are. And they might ask a question, why are you so happy all the time, Jason? And you're going to say, well, I've learned something and it's changed my life. And they say, well, can you teach me? And that's really where the door begins to open. That's where the crack in the foundation of the egoic thought system begins to form and the light begins to shine through. There you go.
I love that. I love your words. I love God's words flowing through you. Thank you so much for your enlightenment today, Brother T. And thank you all for joining us here at True Thought Community, The Second Coming. Please, if you're enjoying this, share this with your friends. Share it. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much, Brother T. See you next week.
I love you, Jason. Talk to you soon.
Love you too, Brother T.
Bye-bye.
Bye.